All right, welcome back. Welcome back. So we are in stage three or level three. And so we're fleshing out a concept and an idea about the different stages of growth, of influence, and being a creative. So we started out with the rainfall, which is kind of the idea, the inspiration. And then that settles into stage two, where you're puddle or pond sort of thing. And that is like it is kind of self-contained. It is a rumination period, fleshing out ideas, seeing if it works within a small circle. And today we're talking about stage three, and that is the outlet. Now, I would like to say here that a lot of people rest content inside of a pond. And that is when it comes to influence, reach, capacity, business, all of this different things, they are okay in a small little circle. And I like to say, there's personally nothing wrong with that. And so I'm not knocking anybody who decides to stay small. But what I do want to offer right here is potential. And that is at the end of days. And if you were reviewing your life and it was like a potential meter, now let's say like a potential meter of 1 to 10, and you were looking back at your life and seeing your potential, the capacity, what could have been, the way that you limited yourself, the way that you kept yourself small, and the way that you shrink yourself, would you be okay with having a potential meter being half reached? No, I personally believe that it's God's intentions for us to be empowered and to reach maximum potential. Now, that is not selfish in any way. In fact, God gets glory by working in and through his people to reach maximum potential. All right. And so with that question in mind, then we go, well, I think then I should be engaged to my full capacity to reach my full potential. And that is, it wouldn't do any good if there is hundreds of songs that are still within you that never got played or never got written, or wouldn't be beneficial for you if you had 12 more books inside of you that you never really fleshed out, or however you want to look at this, that is things that didn't get brought into the world because you didn't decide that you were going to max out your potential, or that you weren't going to see the capacity of your gift, and that you were going to utilize that gift to the best of your ability. Now, this is what is often presented in the parable of the talents, that God distributed each one a talent. Now, some had different degrees, and that degrees was based upon their capacity, all right? Their receptivity to receive and their capacity to hold something. And as we know, the three different men inside of the parable had three different outcomes and effects. But the first two multiplied, and they doubled what was entrusted to them. And then there was one who didn't do nothing in which he was given. And that is, he had potential, he had the energy, he had the capacity to do the same things that the others did, but he chose not to. And the reason why he chose not to was because the narrative and the story that he was spinning inside of his mind. Okay. So potential is a choice. And that is, am I going to decide to reach my capacity or not? Now, that's not to say that at the end of days, we still wouldn't have potential that we didn't reach. I'm not saying that at all, because there's going to be things that we decided not to do, or avenues we decided not to go down, and we didn't really reach our full capacity at that level. But to the best of our ability, it should be in our mindset that I see the capacity that I have and the potential that I have, and that I'm going to be drawn to that potential to begin to flesh that out and to reach that. Okay. So if you're staying small because you just want to stay small and you don't want the headache, and you're not concerned about your potential or your capacity or whatever, then by all means stay small. But if you are deciding that you want to grow, then you're going to have to create a a thing of getting outside of the small circle that you're currently in. In fact, it's my personal belief that if you want to grow and expand, you're going to have to get into new, bigger circles. And inside of each new, bigger circle is a different sort of mastermind. And what I mean by that is you have a lot of people that are inside of that circle that create a kind of mastermind sort of intelligence. And that is you're able to draw from different people that have different specialties and different knowledge, and you're able to think clearer, you're able to get more clarity and all these different things. So if you're wanting to grow, then the circle has to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, in my country property in Missouri, we have water that kind of flows into it. And then so we have this kind of first little pond that was created. And then from there, there is another outlet that goes into another kind of bigger pond. And then inside of that pond, there's kind of a diverted drainage because it can't handle that capacity. So then that water goes on to the neighbor's property, right? And they have a really, really huge pond because they built a capacity to contain. That's the principle that I want to get to here, is that if you want to create something big, you're going to have to dig down deep. And that is, you're going to have to increase your capacity to contain the thing. And then you're also going to have to create an outlet for the thing. And that is for the water to continue on down the path, because it's going to be impossible for you to sustain or to contain everything, right? And so it must be kind of passed on. Now, the principle in this is dig down deep, increase in a larger capacity, your willingness to receive, your receptivity. This all has to do with the growth that you experience. The growth inside of your influence, your business, your life is all connected to your capacity and your willingness to be receptive and to create the container for that thing. All right. But now, so out of that pond goes into another location, and that is there is an outlet. Now, the movement of the water goes through this path. All right. And that's what I get to, is that movement, or creating movement, or the capacity for movement, is what creates the movement. And that is your willingness to take action and to move with a concept or an idea is what actually establishes the movement. Your movement creates the movement. And that is, you have to embody this. You have to move. You have to take action. Because the more movement you have and the more actions that you take is the more momentum that is created around you. Think of if you were being like trailblazing and the trail hasn't been established yet. That if you are in the front as a trailblazer and knocking down the path, you are making the path accessible for the people behind you. And that's the principle I'm teaching here, is trailblaze, take action, move, start, because the path that you lay out is the path that everybody else is going to take. This is where we get outside of the pond and outside of the puddle, and we start creating avenues and outlets for our thing, okay? Our creative thing. Now, your personal flow, and that is internal, that if I can get into a flow of creative genius, whatever it is that I'm creating, then I can create this flow internally, and then my outside world is going to mirror the condition of my heart and my mindset to create the flow externally. If you want flow on the outside, you're going to have to get flow on the inside. All right. In fact, a lot of what we experience in the outside world is a mere reflection of our internal world. The Bible says that in the book of Proverbs, that the heart is like a mirror and it reflects back the heart of man, right? And that is, your life is the sum total results of the seeds that you have been planting and the internal flow that you have been flexing, or the reps that you have been doing internally. If we don't like the external, and that is if we're not creating movement and flow on the outside, the best thing that we can do is to get movement and flow on the inside. Because I guarantee you, if you start moving and you start flowing, your outside world is going to reflect that reality. Now, I find this principle to be true inside of environmental factors. If you want to know what a person's inner world is like, go look at their car and go look at their bedroom and go look at their office desk. These are the three things. You want to know what's going on inside of the mind and the heart of the person? Just go check out their car, their bedroom, and their desk, and you will discover the internal climate of that person, right? If it's Post-it notes everywhere and scatterbrained, everything is just, that is a mere reflection of their internal world. If you go into their room and nothing's hung up and everything's misplaced and the bed's not made, that is the condition of the inside world. And there's no equation where total chaos is going to produce the needed flow and momentum to something great. All right. And so that's why we have to start on the inside, because it's a mere reflection of the outside, is a mere reflection of the inside world. All right. You ever go to somebody's car and you're like, oh my goodness, and there's just like stuff everywhere. Or you go into somebody's room and it looked like a bomb blew off. That is because the bomb has blown off in their mind. You get what I'm saying? All right. So inside of the outlet is a decision. That you are making the decision that you are going to step out of the comfort zone of the pond and you're going to step into movement and to flow and to outlet. This podcast that I'm doing here with you today, this live, this is an outlet. I'm stepping outside of my normal comfort zone and I'm creating an outlet in a movement and things with my words. All right. So there is an outlet. And what you want to create initially is, once you get out of the small circle and bust through, that you create an action, a commitment that there's no going back. And that is, if you're starting a blog, you start out, do your first post and clarify your commitment and the destination. Now, the only way that you can go back with something like that is just kind of not be in integrity with your commitment, not care about keeping your word, like all of these different things, but do an action and a behavior that determines that you are crossing over a threshold. I'm doing something different. I'm going to take the action and behavior. I'm going to publish my first blog. I'm going to publish my first podcast. I'm going to do my first reel. I'm going to show up on social media and do my first post that is business oriented. Whatever it is, do an action and behavior that you press the button, you ship it out, it goes out, it broadcasts, it streams, whatever it is. Do the action that you hit record, and there really is no going back in the sense. All right. Let me explain what I mean. When I started out 9 years ago, I just hit the live button on Facebook Live. Brand new thing. Facebook was pushing out lives like something crazy. I mean, they're not doing that anymore, but it was a new feature. It's kind of like they're doing on TikTok. TikTok is doing a bunch of lives right now. If you want to go live and reach hundreds of people, like, go on TikTok, man. Go live up there and you know, same thing. So anyways, I hit record and I tell my story. And, 20 minutes, I'm just sitting there, just telling my story, and pressed live, told my story, got off, went to work, checked it the next day. And I'm not kidding you, like 30 to 40,000 people. It was absolutely, everybody was sharing it, and it got put into all of these groups. And I'm like, I had like that Jerry Maguire sort of moment where he ships off his conscience. And he just, at a moment just kind of ships it out. And then the next day he's like, holy smokes, what just happened? That's exactly the moment I had. And people were reaching out to me. Like, it was just crazy because I got raw and real and alive and told my story, and it connected with thousands and thousands of people. And off the journey began. Now, could I have shut off everything and deleted the video and pretend like nothing happened? I could have, but it was already too late because 40,000 people already seen it. There's really nothing that I could do at that point to take anything back. That's the moment you want, is that you say you're going to start a podcast, make the announcement, ship it out into the world, just post it, all right? Because that moment is a crossing of a threshold moment. Now, inside of the hero's journey, there's always a crossing of the threshold. And that is, there is a point in the journey where a decision is made, where as a responsibility is embraced, and the hero in the story is no longer kind of in preparation mode, all right? They are now entering the story and they are taking action. That could be like, so in Simba, in the Lion King, like the Hakuna Matata, that's part of the story, but that's not stepping into identity or to the narrative. All right. That's just part of the carefree. I don't have any responsibilities. There's a problem out there, but I'm not the one to solve the problem. Somebody else will do it. The crossing of the threshold is the embracing of the identity and stepping into it. All right. So it's not preparing, it's entering the story, and the journey becomes real because you made a decision and you decided to take action. Now, if you're building anything that is going to grow, you're not starting out with a full kind of brand sort of thing. And that is, you're just starting out with you and your service and a belief. That is a belief that you can create difference, a belief that you can solve a problem, a belief in yourself, a belief in your capabilities, a belief in your future. Again, everything starts with a belief. There's a belief that I can do this, a belief that this is actually possible. All right. So the beginning stages of this is the why. You're not going to build a huge brand that reaches the ocean or build a powerful platform that reaches thousands until you build clarity. And that is a movement, momentum, flow is going to start when you can say, like, this is what is happening in my life right now. This is the main problem that I see. This is the situation that I want to solve. These are the people that I want to help. And then begin to attach that to a why. So the beginning stages are getting established in the who, and that is who you are. The foundation of any growth is going to be connected to your identity. You have to start with being first, all right? And then it connects to a why. Why does this even matter to me? Why does this matter to the people that are listening to me? Why does this matter in the long scheme of the world? And why does this matter to legacy or to something of eternal value, right? Why does this even matter there? And then it goes into what you are going to do about it. So after you got the who, it's the why, and it's the what. Later on, you'll get to some of the wheres and hows. But this is just simply that you have established a good why. Now, during this phase, you're going to know the problem. In fact, if I was giving advice for somebody, I would tell them to get thoroughly established inside of the problem and the pain that their target audience is experiencing without your solution. All right. So for mine, it's like the pain of not getting the credibility not getting the influence, not getting the cash flow, and not getting the impact. These four things is like, so without my services or process or me taking somebody along in the journey, that these four things inside of people's lives, they're going to be a struggle. They're going to be minimal. They're not going to feel like they're like growing in each of those levels. And thereby it's going to feel a lot of pain, discontentment, frustration. Why am I not having influence? Why I'm not creating impact? Why do not people don't take me seriously? Why are my offers not hitting home? Why am I not able to create wealth inside of these things? Okay. So get thoroughly in touch with the problem and the pain that your target avatar is experiencing. In fact, I recommend 12 pain points. Really get in touch with your avatar's pain. All right. This is what's going to be effective as far as your communication on social media. When you speak, it's going to carry authority and weight because there's an empathetic, there is a knowing how it is. I know how it feels. When anybody addresses the pain that we are experiencing, there's going to be an immediate connection because you're going to raise your hand, even if it's on the inside, and say, that's me. Okay. Now, the reason why it's so important to get in touch with this is because I get this all the time from companies that I'm not particularly their target avatar. And the reason why I know this is because they keep on sending me messages that talk about pain that I am not experiencing. They say it so assertively, like they're talking to my pain. And it's like, whoo, whoo. You obviously don't have me dialed in. I'm not your target avatar because it's not resonating. You're not hitting home with me. Now, if somebody started talking to me about scaling and business growth and some of these different things, and they started talking to the pain points that's connected to initial growth and initial scaling and some of these different things inside of business, and they started talking to me about those pain points, then I would be like, this person understands how I feel, right? Because they are talking to the right person with the right pain point. Let's put this in a practical example. Is if you're in chiropractic and your main thing is back pain, right? Then you should be talking about back pain quite a bit. And that is then the pain associated with back pain. What is all the things that the person cannot do or cannot be or cannot have because of their back pain? And then you go ahead and list them all out. This is the pain that your target avatar is experiencing. And then you show up on social media through podcasting, through posts, through books, through courses, and all these different things to alleviate the pain of that person. All right. So in this stage of creating an outlet, you're going to have to know the enemies. That is, what is it that I'm fighting against? What am I fighting against? So one of the main things that I decided to fight against is inactivity and sideline thinking. And that is that we could just sit on the sidelines and begin to be armchair quarterbacks and spectators inside of life, giving commentary in all the people that are taking action and begin to criticize, judge, and find fault and all these different things. Or to stay on the sidelines because of fear, that I'm afraid to put myself out there. I'm afraid to bust beyond my bubble and to begin to create an outlet. So I have decided that the main enemy is fear and inactivity. With that is connected to a sense of apathy. You know, if you don't think men are apathetic, you haven't done a lot of work with men. And that is, a majority of men are not awake. And that is, they are on autopilot and they are going through the motions and they need something to begin to stir them up and to wake them up. All right. So I've decided that that's the enemy. So that's how I'm going to talk. Now, the enemy inside of your thing, it could be something quite different. Let's say, for example, that your main service thing is to help people with their financials. business or personal. Let's just go that route. That what is the enemy? Think of the main enemy, like the biggest arch enemy in that level for them. And to think of like his little cronies. What is the sub enemies that he's rolling with, right? And to begin to look at your service and your product and your offer as a enemy destroying, sacred cow busting, limiting belief smashing sort of endeavor. Let me tell you, you're not going to get people to break through until you identify their enemies. So to create a movement, you have to know what you are about, and then you have to know what you are not about. I'm all about helping other people create the influence and impact, the credibility, and the cash flow through verbal communications and creative forms of communications. I'm all about that. What I'm not about is people sitting on the sidelines in passivity and not become the leaders that God has called them to be. God has called us to take action, to get off the sidelines and to get into the game. All right? So I'm not about that. I'm about this. So in the financial realm, there are people living in chaos, unclarity, no structure, no systems, no buckets, no strategy, no percentages, whatever it is inside of business or personal life. And they have all of that going on. So what is the main enemy there? And what are the sub enemies? What are you for? Financial peace and prosperity, legacy, right? What are you not for? All of the chaos of the disorder and the dysfunction and the lack of clarity, lack of mission, all these different things. So there is a main enemy that you are standing against. And let me tell you, this is not a person. Even the Bible says this, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. All right. And so that is the signification that there is systems, there is structures, there is belief systems, and there is paradigms. This is the actual enemy, the patterns, not the people. All right. The people are held captive by the structures and the patterns. And your system and your offer is the system and structure pattern breaker. So they can develop new routines and new habits that actually produce the success that they're looking for. Okay, that's the goal. So the example would be that, we fight against passivity. We fight against confusion. We fight against lower level, low status living. We fight against survival mode and scarcity. All right. We fight against fake religious leadership that is shallow, like you name it, right? You're deciding what you're going to fight against. The next is really dial in your lingo in how you are communicating that. You'll notice with any sort of movements that there are taglines, there is ways of communication, there are things that we say, things that we do, there is shared terminology. In some communities, there's even inside jokes. Inside of some communities is a sense of shared identity statements. If you go to a healthy church that is filled with identity, you're going to be established in your identity in Christ. I'm chosen, I am loved, I'm accepted, I'm a child of God, more than a conqueror. Like you're going to find a shared sense of identity. Now, inside of culture, you're also going to find if you establish culture in a positive way, because of the values that you have set, you are going to get a culture that also says that we don't do that here. If you've built a culture on responsibility and ownership, then because of the value that you have established, you know that the enemy is irresponsibility and excuses. So if you embody a culture that has this, you're naturally going to be about this and not about that. All right. So then you're going to create a culture that we don't do that here. We are the kind of people that does this, right? I hope to inspire you to be the kind of person that gets off the sidelines, that takes action and that uses their voice to create impact and influence in this world for good. All right? For this, I'm not the kind of person that is going to lullaby you to sleep through sedation. I'm not going to encourage you to be passive or to sit on the sideline. I'm not going to encourage you to be a spectator. All right? All right? The next stage inside of a movement is proof. And that is if you can produce the transformation inside of somebody's life, prove it. You know, we're very close to Missouri, and Missouri is known as the show me state. And it's a little bit cynical, and rightly so, because some of the biggest cults have come from Missouri. And I would say that in the past, there has been a history of a little bit of gullibility in the sense of there has been a lot of movements that are detrimental to people start out here, and people start drinking the Kool-Aid a little too quick. So I get it, right? But inside of the culture is show me. Wah, 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 wah. You know, initially very cynical, rightly so, that you're going to have to prove it. The proof is in the pudding. Show me. So to create an actual movement, there's going to have to be wins. And that is, you're going to have to begin to show other people winning. Movements and bandwagon effects are created by people seeing people get on board your train. All right. And if people can see people get on board your train, then they're like, it might be safe to board that train. Now, if people see people constantly exiting your train, they look at that and say, it's probably not safe to get on that train. Nobody wants to go on a train that is in direct for a collision course. Nobody gets on board a sinking ship intentionally. Please sign me up. Yeah, here's my ticket. Punch me in. I want to get on the sinking ship. Says nobody ever, right? Instead of create the bandwagon effect is early proof, people getting wins. It doesn't have to be huge. What it just has to communicate is that this thing works. And it works because showing you that it works. And so what this looks like in podcasting is make sure that you interview your clients in the customer journey. Make sure that that is happening. If you're writing articles and blogs and books or anything like that, make sure that you are sharing your wins that your people are getting. If you are doing reels or creative on social media, talk about your tribe a lot and the success that they're getting and the testimonials and all that. Brag upon your people by all means. Tell how good they are doing. Let me tell you, the company that begins to brag on their people and shows their people getting wins and success, those are the people that are going to win. And those are the people that are going to create the movement. All right? This is why a movement starts with a transformation. And that is, initially, you only need one transformation for you to see if there's a repeatable process. Well, I created this transformation for this one person. Maybe I could do it for another person. So one transformed person, one story, one result, one testimony, one sense of win will give you the momentum to create more, right? You know, have one kid, you're probably going to have two. Got the skills down, got the process down. It's a good likely chance you're going to create more. And that's the way seed planting works, is that when you mature and you grow and you begin to plant the seeds, like most plants begin to drop kind of all kinds of different seeds in order for reproduction to take place. A movement can only be established by the reproduction and the mass reproducing of the result that you're getting. That you can get this for all kinds of people, but it starts with one. And that is something good, something positive, something that's going to create the momentum. It doesn't start initially with a major marketing program. It starts with one transformation, one soul that's saved, one. That's it. That's how movements begin to start. And they launch with the evidence of the transformation. All right. And lastly, need a simple action. Every movement needs a simple action for somebody to take. Not complex, it's not perfect, but the goal here is just repeatable. Repeatable, that's it. In fact, I want you to think about it this way. If you are faith-based, then you understand that Jesus Christ was the model example of leadership far none, bar none, right? And that is, there's nobody comparable to his style of influence, to his leadership skills, and to the way that he communicated, okay? And that is the way that he began to work was this. He got the burden, and that is the assignment, the mission, be endued with power from on high, overcome his personal demons inside of the wilderness. Before he ever preached the Sermon on the Mount, he dealt with the darkness, right? And so he got placed, a burden was placed upon him. And that burden at some point transformed into a message. Now, how long that burden was sitting? Maybe it was sitting from 12 years on. We don't actually know. But you can guarantee that he was sitting there ruminating with that burden for a period of time until initiation. And that is, there was a process and a time where it was time to move. And that burden became a message. And so he started speaking. And you can guarantee that the people that were drawn to him were attracted to his form of communication and the language that he was using. In fact, we're still using the same terminology and the same lingo 2,000 years later for some of the processes that we call evangelism, discipleship, like all of these different things have originated from the lingo from 2,000 years ago. So I had a language. And then he had a sense of proof. And that is that he had people that were willing to follow him. There's nothing more proven in leadership than other followers, right? That he had people that were willing to follow. And then he had action. That is, that he had pep in his step. He was going somewhere and he had a mission and he was literally traveling and doing all of these different things. So massive action, because you can't get somebody to move if you're not moving. And you can't be a leader if you aren't a step ahead. There is no such thing as a leader who is not a step ahead, right? Got to be a step ahead. To be a step ahead, you got to be stepping. Action. And then he created a community around that action. And that is, he had disciples. Disciple is just simply a pupil, and that is a mentee. He was the mentor and they were the mentees. And that is, he was giving them or causing them to experience transformation inside of their lives and producing results inside of their lives. And then not only that, he had women that were following along with him. So he's got these 12 guys and he's got multiple women that are traveling with him, and they're going from town to town, and they're doing the mission. They're taking action. And he built a community around taking action. All right? So much so that he began to get like 70 other disciples. And then he began to speak to the masses. And we're talking like 5,000, 10,000 people sometimes at a time during these big events that he would put on. So he would put these big events on. Now, we don't see behind the scenes the heralds that are coming into these different locations and gathering the people. We don't see logistics behind it, but let me tell you, there were logistics. Not only that, he had a treasurer that was holding a bag of money, because he had to supply for the needs of wants of at least 20 people, right? In today's day and age, if each person was $50,000 to $75,000 and you had 10 to 20, we're talking about $1.5 million in today's terms, right? That's small potatoes for a lot of movements. But at any rate, he created this community around it. And so during this time, he's investing inside of this small group of people, and he's developing leadership skills. And the leadership skills is to reproduce, and that is, he's going to take him and he's going to plant the seed of him, his life-giving energy, force, power, communication, paradigm, worldview, everything. And then he's going to put these into 12 different men. So what? So he can mass produce, so he can create a movement, so he can create leaders, other leaders, right? The reason why we are still talking about Christ today is because of this movement framework that I just established with you right now. That's the reason why we're talking. If he decided that he wasn't going to develop other leaders, that he was just going to speak to the crowds, right? And that he wasn't going to reproduce himself inside of others and create other leaders, we would not be talking about him today. I don't think anything would have ever gained momentum or wings. The reason why it gained wings is because the reproduction model. All right. So that tells me this, that if we want to produce something, we're going to have to invest into a small group of people, and then we're going to have to create a system and a process that is easily repeatable, right? You are the prototype, and that you are creating a system and a process because you've gone through it, that you can create a short, easy process for other people to go through, and that those people can become leaders and teach other people how to go through it. That's how movements are created. All right, which ultimately leads to scalability. Now, outside of business, what this looks like is, am I have the ability to get somebody to buy into the culture, the proof, the buy-in, the actions, and the community and everything, and create a leader that will produce some sort of scalability. So even inside of business, the principles remain. All right. All right. So you're going to plant your flag. You're going to say, this is what I stand for. This is who I serve. This is the problems that I solve. This is what I am against. This is what I'm not going to be about. That's what I'm not going to do. All right. Now, the challenges at the outlet stage is going to be fear. Fear, fear, fear. Now, it's going to come in multiple different ways. You know, there's going to be fear of judgment, criticism. The who do you think you are narrative and dialogue is going to be spinning. And it's going to be the initial fear that stops the momentum, fear of failure. I'm going to stay on the sidelines. I'm not going to take action because what if I leave this small little circle and I'm not successful and I have to return back in failure? I have to come back to my small little tribe and say that I did not accomplish the thing. What if this flops? What if I go public with this thing and I don't have the ability to carry it out? Fear of failure, fear of success. And you wouldn't think that people would be afraid of success. They are. Some of the dialogue with fear of success is, what if I let this go to my head? What if I become one of those people who let success and money go to that? Look at them. They're so pompous, or they're so showy, or they're so vain, or whatever it is, right? We have a strong fear of success. I don't want to become like them. If you have a negative association with successful, wealthy, and rich people, you're going to make sure that you never become successful, wealthy, or rich, because you will not become something that you despise. If you push it out aside, you criticize, you judge, you find fault against those people, you're going to make sure that you resist and never become that, right? That's the same thing that I used to have with healthy people. Like most of the healthy people on my feed were cocky, they were arrogant, they were condescending, like talking down, like fat shaming people, and, suck it up. Like it's just very, very aggressive tones of communication. So I correlated to being healthy and being fit to some of these very negative stereotypes inside of the world and be like, no, I'm not going to become that guy. I'm not going to become that guy. That's not me. And so I resist because I correlated healthy with that. And so inside there was an internal resistance. Until I recognized that, began to set that aside, I never could become healthy because there was an internal resistance to it based upon a character. that I had fashioned inside of my mind. All right. Overthinking the first move. Once again, fear. All right. So this is going to produce hesitation, all of these different things. So since we are coming on the threshold moment of stepping over, then what's going to cause you to step over is an acknowledgement. I may not be ready. I may not have all the talent, skills, and resources that I need. I may not be fully equipped to handle this currently at the moment. I don't have feelings that are in alignment because I'm feeling fear right now. So I'm not feeling confident. All of these different things are right at the threshold. And we can either take that as communication that I'm not ready to bust through, or we can take that I have all of these feelings and all of these doubts and all these different things. I'm going to do it scared. I'm going to do it insecure. I'm going to do it even though I might not be fully equipped at this moment, but I do have some sort of equipment and I have some sort of idea. So I'm going to move forward with the talent, skills, and resources that I currently have till I grow in there. Threshold moment. Now, that threshold moment is going to have to include that this is who I am. I'm not dipping my toe in. I'm not going to try this. I'm stepping into a business owner. I'm stepping into a author. I'm stepping into a podcaster, embracing and embodying my new identity that's on the other side of this threshold. Okay. And I'm choosing to be responsible for the burden that I have. And I'm going to do the actions necessary. Let me tell you, at this moment, it usually comes at a great sacrifice. Check the hero's journey motifs. Do you think that stepping out is going to be met with applause? Do you think any of the motifs that stepping out was going to be easy? Right before Christ's public ministry, before the Sermon on the Mount, before the healing and restoration of the souls of men, before bringing healing to the world, there was a wilderness, a time of testing, a time of digging deep. There will always be a cost associated and a personal sacrifice associated with where it is that you're going. Investment of time, investment of money, investment of focus, energy. It's always going to require a payment. Now, I got a clue a long time ago that the reason why I don't have what it is that I say that I want is because I am not willing to pay the price to get it. And that is, I am not willing to do what it is required. Inside of the conversation that needs to happen at this moment is, what does it take? What does it take? And this is a simply of counting the cost. If you were going to bake a cake, you would have to see first if you have the required ingredients. There's been a couple times, even recently, that we were thinking, we want to have this for dinner. Yay! And we decide that we're going to have that for dinner. And then we look inside of the fridge and we forgot to put the turkey inside of the fridge to defrost. Now, about you, that I like to have turkey that has been sitting in the fridge for a day that defrosts naturally, then put it in the defroster. It's just something with it that it's not quite as good, or doesn't, like, I don't know, there's something with it. It could be just my mind, right? And that is, we didn't do the thing that was necessary or have the required ingredients in order to carry out this mission and plan. What does it require? Let me tell you, with a big smile on my face, you're going to have to pay the price, man. You're going to have to do what is required. Let me tell you, there are things required for a successful book. There are things required for a successful course. There are things required for a successful podcast. There's things required for the successful business. And it all comes down to our willingness to do what is required. So what is it going to take? Now, this goes to personal efficacy and identity, because you have to ask yourself, what is it going to take for me? And that is, who do I need to become to carry this out successfully? Who do I need to become? Whew, I can go on and on. All right, so the pond is where the calling is protected. The outlet is where the calling is proven. And your enemy isn't lack of talent. Your enemy is going to be fear. It is hesitation. It is your mindset to stay small. It is the inaction, the excuses, whatever it is. Okay. So the real outlet is you taking massive action into a certain direction. Once again, think of the rainfall. Inspiration idea comes down. It goes into a puddle or pond. It can be self-contained within that. You can dig deep. You can do multiple different things inside of that circle. But you have to get out of that is to create an outlet. And you have to create momentum, movement, and flow. And that is you got to take massive, massive action. Cross the threshold is always going to be action. I'll see you tomorrow.